After the merge wrapped up on April 12th, all eyes are now on the next big milestone, the Surge, the second major chapter in Ethereum's roadmap, and specifically EIP 4844. So what's this update all about? What's this going to bring to the table? We'll break it all down for you in this video. The Surge is a package of enhancements and updates designed to significantly boost Ethereum's performance and capacity, especially in terms of the number of transactions that can be processed and validated per second on the network. The first step will roll out with the Cancun Deneb update by the end of the year. This update gets its name from two distinct elements. On one hand, Cancun refers to the update focused on Ethereum's execution layer, or EL. It's also a nod to the host city of the DevCon 3 conference back in 2017. Then we have Deneb. It relates to the upgrade of the consensus layer, or CL. The name refers to one of the brightest stars in the sky, which is part of the Cygnus constellation. It symbolizes hope and ambition, reflecting the Ethereum community's vision for this improvement. The Cancun Deneb update will introduce a number of improvements, with the most significant one likely being EIP 4844, also known as Proto-Dank sharding. This EIP is a simplified implementation of the full version of Dank sharding, and it aims to enhance the efficiency and rollups on Ethereum. Don't sweat it if these terms sound complex or abstract. They're really not, so stick with me. We're going to break it all down. As you may know, Vitalik Buterin's creation has often been a victim of its own success. Over the past few years, we've frequently seen transaction fees, as well as network latency on Ethereum, become pretty unmanageable. To address this issue, the idea is to shift as much activity as possible to secondary chains. These so-called Layer 2s, which are more efficient and better suited for the task. Among these Layer 2 solutions are rollups, which are going to be the focus of our video today. In a nutshell, because we'll get into the nitty-gritty in just a few minutes, rollups bundle multiple transactions into one big package, hence the name rollup, which is then sent to Layer 1, the main Ethereum network. The result? You get the security and decentralization of Ethereum while eliminating the sky-high fees for users. Pretty cool, right? Well, yes and no. When Layer 2s connect to the main chain, they don't send all the transactions one by one. Instead, they generate a compressed summary, a sort of cryptographic fingerprint that concisely represents all these transactions. This fingerprint, called a proof of validity, ensures that all the Layer 2 transactions are genuine and correct. This optimizes space on the main blockchain. But the problem is, even though these fingerprints are smaller than complete transactions, their cumulative volume can become huge, and Ethereum wasn't originally designed to manage and store such a large volume of data. You see, Ethereum rollups need what's called data availability, or DA, to function and prove the integrity of the information within them. In simple terms, this means that each transaction must not only be accessible to everyone, but also verifiable by anyone on the network. Thanks to this system, we ensure that no one can cheat or hide information, guaranteeing complete security and transparency. And that's why, for now, most rollups directly store their validity proofs in the call data section of the transaction. That's the yellow part you see on the screen, which usually contains all the execution instructions for the transaction. Whether it's transferring tokens from one wallet to another or deploying a complex smart contract, all this info is meticulously recorded in that section. It's kind of like the steps in a recipe. For a dish to come out right, each ingredient needs to be used correctly. The same goes for an Ethereum transaction. Each instruction in the call data needs to be executed correctly. But there's a little issue with operating this way. Yep. Remember, transaction fees are based on the amount and complexity of data. So the more data a transaction contains, and therefore the heavier it is, the more expensive it gets. Transactions from rollups take up more space in a block, and thus they're pricier. So sure, a transaction on a rollup like Arbitrum might only cost a few bucks, a far more manageable sum than on Ethereum's main network. But compared to the few cents usually seen on other blockchains, this cost is still high. To put the magnitude of the situation into perspective, last May alone, about 7,300 ETH were spent just on gas fees on Optimism and Arbitrum, which is close to $14 million. This is where the Cancun Deneb update comes in, introducing a new data space called Blob for binary large objects. This concept is used to store information about transactions that take place off the main Ethereum chain, specifically on rollups. We'll circle back to this concept, but to understand the value of blobs, we first need to talk about how a rollup works. As we mentioned, these are second layer or layer 2 solutions. There are optimistic rollups like Arbitrum or Optimism, and ZK rollups like ZK Sync or Starknet. But we won't get too deep into the details for this video. The workings of a rollup are pretty straightforward. Think of Ethereum like a regional mail sorting center. The post offices in each town are akin to what we call sequencers that collect a large number of letters, and in our case, transactions. Instead of sending them one by one, which is slow and costly, they're bundled up or rolled up into a big package, a batch or rollup. That's then shipped over to layer 1 along with a proof of validity. This proof acts like a shipping label, succinctly detailing the package's contents. It lists key elements of each transaction, like the sender, the recipient, and the nature of the transaction, without going into the details of each operation. Thanks to this label, anyone on the main chain can quickly grasp the gist of the transactions contained in the package without having to open and examine each individual letter. So it's a clever system that combines efficiency with security, giving you the best of both worlds. In a bear market, this bundling method works well. But as soon as transaction volumes across multiple layer 2s starts to skyrocket, the solution shows its limitations. The main Ethereum network gets congested again. All the packages, all the rollups have to pass through the same bottleneck to be stored on the main chain. It's like a regional mail sorting center getting swamped with way too many packages all at once. The system just wasn't built to handle that kind of traffic efficiently. And that's where things start to slow down and get expensive. And that's where the EIP 4844 comes into play. The idea is to introduce the concept of a binary large object, or blob, as a new Ethereum transaction format. Basically, rollups will finally get to use something tailor-made for them and stop storing their data in the call data of Ethereum transactions. The blob format has been specifically thought out and designed for rollups, which means you can pack more transactions into each one. With this approach, an Ethereum block could hold up to 16 blobs, equating to roughly 1 megabyte of data every 12 seconds. That's 100 times more than what we have today. Moreover, blobs aren't directly inserted into the blocks, but are rather attached to the outside when they're included in a transaction. So it's like upgrading from a small mailbox to a massive storage unit right next door. More room, less clutter, and much better flow. It's a game changer for rollups and for Ethereum as a whole. That means they're not permanently stored on the Ethereum blockchain. They're temporary, which works out perfectly for layer 2s that don't need long-term data storage. Why? Well, it's pretty simple. Rollups just need to prove their transactions are valid at a specific moment in time. Once that confirmation is received and approved by Ethereum, there's no need to keep all the transaction details around. The confirmation itself is sufficient. So, after serving this validation purpose, the blobs are removed from Ethereum a few weeks later. It's like having a temporary storage locker where you only keep stuff until you've confirmed it's all legit, and then you clear it out. This keeps the main Ethereum blockchain lean and efficient while still ensuring the security and validity of layer 2 transactions. It's another win-win situation for everyone involved. Just a heads up, transactions that carry blobs include a special indelible marker known as a KZG commitment. This forever ties a transaction and a blob together. It's as if every blob has its own unique barcode, and that barcode is then etched into the blockchain transaction. Even if the package, or the blob, is taken off the shelf, meaning it's not permanently stored on the blockchain, you can still scan that barcode, the KZG commitment, to confirm that a package was indeed there and it was legit. So even though the blobs aren't permanent, their integrity can be easily verified thanks to this unique marker. Another key point with this blob system is that because they're outside the blocks, the Ethereum Virtual Machine, or EVM, doesn't need to process them directly. And let's be very clear, these blobs aren't even readable by the EVM. So going back to our postal center analogy, regular transactions are like standard letters, sorted and delivered by our trusty mailman, the EVM. Blobs, on the other hand, are like big packages delivered straight to the recipient without the mailman having to sort them out. By sidestepping the need to clog up our sorting center, the EVM, with these big packages, the blobs, we cut down on extra gas fees tied to processing these transactions, making the whole operation more efficient and more cost-effective. This update might finally make it possible to dive back into DeFi, that's decentralized finance, on the main network, something that wasn't really feasible unless you had a few thousand euros to invest. Also, the Cancun Deneb update is going to change how fees are managed on the network, based on the size of the blob. If the blob size is under 250 kilobytes, gas fees will be reduced. Just for context, data from rollups typically come in at about 50 kilobytes per block these days. You might be seeing a lot of similarities with Bitcoin's famous Segwit update. That's no coincidence. Both of these game-changing innovations have revolutionized how data is stored on the blockchain, with a special focus on supporting Layer 2 protocols. And just a quick FYI, the crypto world is ever-changing, so if you don't want to get left behind, subscribe to our GA Crypto channel to always stay up to date. Alright, where was I? Let's jump back in. The Cancun Deneb update isn't just about introducing blobs. As we mentioned earlier, it's also setting the stage for advanced concepts, like dank sharding, which you could think of as a Pokemon evolution of proto-dank sharking. It's essentially the final version of the surge. The goal is to introduce up to 64 blobs per block, amounting to nearly 8 megabytes. That's huge! To sum it up, this Denkum update will bring numerous benefits to the network. The introduction of blobs to optimize storage space will allow Ethereum to handle more information in a condensed area, making the network more efficient. This will, in turn, cut transaction costs for users by a factor of 10. All while improving Ethereum's scalability. This reduction in fees will be a game changer for rollups, which should logically see their transaction volumes skyrocket over time. In addition to these financial and performance benefits, blobs will offer greater flexibility in transaction management, paving the way for new types of smart contracts and decentralized applications. However, despite all these advantages, there are many questions concerning the implementation of EIP 4844. For example, for months, developers have been debating the most optimal way to handle blobs. Originally, they considered using a data encoding format called SSZ, Simple Serialize, in the execution layer, which is essentially Ethereum's engine. To keep it simple, this format is a way to encode data so it can be more easily stored or transmitted. However, Ethereum's engine has always operated with another serialization format, RLP, Recursive Length Prefix. So changing this format is a bit like switching from a gasoline car to an electric one. It requires major adjustments. That's why they made a decision, for now, to remove the use of SSZ in the execution layer to facilitate the implementation of EIP 4844. And then there's another significant area of uncertainty concerning blobs and the MEV transactions. And a third very important point is that blobs could significantly impact the workload on full Ethereum nodes. Currently, a standard Ethereum transaction typically weighs less than 1 kilobyte, making it easy and quick for Ethereum nodes to propagate it without requiring huge bandwidth. But with blobs that can be as large as 128 kilobytes each, it's a whole different ballgame. These blobs will demand substantially more computational power to be transmitted between nodes. It's like if you were to suddenly start sending packages instead of letters. It requires more resources and more effort. This poses a significant risk to the network's decentralization. The last thing to mention before wrapping up is the impact of this update on the amount of Ether in circulation. As you probably know, since the implementation of EIP 1559, Ethereum has become deflationary, meaning more Ether is burned than issued on the network. This situation is mainly due to activity on Ethereum and the associated fees. To put it simply, the more fees are paid, the more Ether is burned, making it more scarce in a way. So, one might wonder if a significant reduction in transaction fees on rollups could then affect the supply of circulating Ether. Alright, according to Ultrasound Money, Layer 2 solutions accounted for 8% of the total Ether burned over the last 30 days. So yes, EIP 4844 could potentially reduce the amount of Ether burned due to Layer 2 activities. but it should remain relatively marginal. The Ethereum roadmap is still extensive, and there's no shortage of topics to cover in the coming months. For instance, EIP 4337 is right around the corner and is set to make some pretty significant changes to the #2 cryptocurrency in the market. If you're not yet familiar with what it is, I highly recommend checking out this video.